What's the story you're most excited to tell?
For me, the single most important thing with Shrijeet for me has been just how to look at your career and, how to really marry what are you really passionate about in your life. In general, like we have passions all over. It overlaps personal and professional lives. How can you bring all of that personality to your career? Shrijeet really was the seed for me for that. But just the way he would act on a daily basis, the things he would say in the meetings, the way he would write his emails, or the way he would actually navigate the meetings. I remember that, I would sit in that room and I would be like, I want to become a leader like that. Like Shrijeet's the sanctum sanctorium for the leadership for me, and I really hope I can get there someday. And it really helped me practically, even when I was progressing in the career. And I was just out of university. I had just joined Cisco, so I was very fresh, very green. I was just watching, and everything was food for thought for me. And I was so glad I interacted with people like him.
Well, we're going to dive into all of the different elements of that story because I think with a lot of things that you're sharing about, Srijit helping you bring your full passionate self to work and to be able to develop how you align that with your career. I think there's so many things that we can tease out from there. And I think one of the places we wanted to start is because when you shared your nomination, one of the things you mentioned is that, and even in this conversation, the sanctum sanctorum of leaders, Shrijeet being one of the smartest, most inspiring leaders that you've worked with. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more about the relationship you have with Shrijeet? How did you first connect? And I know you'd mentioned that he's been a mentor for you for a long time. What has that relationship been like since you've known each other?
So how it started was I went to North Carolina State University, and that time there was this thing called a Cisco Choice program where once you landed the internship, you could actually select the team that you wanted to work with. And that time Shrijeet was the hiring manager. And I was very excited about this team. And without a blink of the eye, I selected that. And he told me later that, my resume was the first one that he had picked as well. And he was very funny from the beginning. It was never just about work. He was always inspiring. He never answered questions directly. He always, whenever he knew that, I had some kind of a direction I wanted to go in, or I had a project that I wanted to work on, it was always like, okay, why do you want to work on that? Why are you attracted to it? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And he would never answer my questions at all. He would only ask questions. And then somehow when I was in his room, I would figure out the answers. And sometimes I would be like, no, this doesn't work. A lot of times I voiced my opinions later down the line as well during the 4 years we worked. And he would just sit there, be a good listener, and then allow me to come back the next day where, I would have made peace with it. And I was like, you know what, Shrijeet, you're right. Let me do it this way. Even when we used to talk about Shrijeet during lunch table conversations, right? Everyone agreed that he was a great leader. Everyone under the team felt like we were all closely knit and we were working towards the same goal. And that was truly just because of him, because it was a big team otherwise. So my relationship with him started like that, where, I was definitely a fresh grad and he was definitely already a senior engineering manager. I was reporting to him. And he never made me feel like I was a subordinate or like, I was too new. He was always very inspiring.
It sounds like he spent a lot of time helping you come to conclusions yourself or to find the answers for yourself, but also pointing you to the people, the best sources of information to help you figure those answers out for yourself.
So now I know that, looking back, he was a great coach. Coaching is hard, especially when you know that it's a very unequal relationship. But Shrijeet somehow managed to do that. And he always made sure I had help. He always made sure I had access to the right principal engineers, right tech leads, and write the right emails just to kind of put me in touch with the right people who would resolve a particular conflict. He made sure help was just one click away. But at the same time, he was the inspiring factor behind it.
We'll dive into some more of the inspiring stories in a second, but I was wondering, like, from your observation, like, what would you say was Shrijeet's secret to coaching? Like, what would you say were some of the ways that he worked with you and other people that helped bring out the best and help coach people the best way?
So first of all, I think he's a great listener. It started with that. How do you not make the other person feel interrupted and yet steer the conversation so that time is not lost. So he used to do that very well. So he would definitely listen to perspectives. In my case, definitely before he would give advice or before he would share his feedback, he was definitely making sure that I was heard. And similar to my case, even in other situations, that team had senior leaders and they were people with big egos. They had worked for a long time. They were all experts. But Shrijeet managed to kind of resolve those conflicts in a very he just knew the art of negotiation and using his social capital really well. He was just a very smart leader that way. He knew, how much to talk, where not to bring up certain things, how to write emails correctly, or even how to run one-on-ones. I think that was what made the coaching very effective. It started with listening, sharing the feedback. I read about radical candor now, but I remember all our feedback sessions used to be like that. It was authentic, it was honest. At the same time, it was not blunt. He never hurt people with his critical feedback. He would have feedback. It's just that, the way he would come, it was always brief, concise, and contextual. So I think that was the framework which made coaching really effective. Now, of course, because I understand these things, I can put it into words. Back then, I didn't understand. I just knew that it was working.
I think like what you pointed out, the framework in which Shrijeet approaches coaching. Do you have a story from, maybe a challenging situation you encountered, the coaching that Shrijeet provided and the impact that had on you?
So there was this particular situation. I was about 1 year into my job. I was put on this monotonous work. It being I was a firmware engineer, so this was a hardware issue, and it was a cyclic redundancy check issue. It was not interesting for the software people because I didn't have any scope to write code. It was just running some regression tests, taking some notes, and then helping the hardware team the next day. And this went on for a month. And I have always been very proactive and aggressive with my career. So I remember I went to Shrijeet and I told him that I don't think I can do this anymore because I'm not learning anything new. I'm not writing any code. And not a lot of my brain power is getting used. So what should I do? If you want me to work on this, can you give me another project so that I can stay happy? So what he told me was, currently we don't have the personnel who can take over this immediately. So and I don't want you to keep working on something that you're not interested in. So he told me that if I continue to just help the team out for a little bit more time and try to get creative, like, can you do something using the software? Your problem is you're not able to write programs, right? So can you think of creative ways? Can you write more scripts? Can you do something that can help us catch this issue quicker, so that you as an engineer are doing everything? It keeps you challenged for a little bit more, and maybe that really helps the hardware team to close this issue as soon as possible. Meanwhile, let me start looking for someone who can replace you, and maybe you can train them into this project, and side by side we can find a different project. But to be honest, it's going to take this much time. In my case, it was going to take about 3-4 weeks for this to kind of transition. So he set the right expectations, and then he was like, you are very valuable to this. He told me that I'm super valuable to this project because I've maintained it for a couple of months now, and I have a lot of expertise. So he did 3 things, right? He inspired me, he made me feel purposeful, and he made me feel as if I was really adding value. There was no one else that could do this job, and Mallika is the only person who can do it, and you're doing it for us. So thank you so much. And I know I care about you. I'm going to find you the next thing, but currently what is important to the team is we get through this. So the mission was very clear. He inspired me. He made me feel more useful to the team. And he also had some plans for me. He communicated, and throughout the next 4 weeks we worked together. How can I start another project that was coming in and all that. And he's like, sometimes you need to do the less interesting thing. And he would be like, you know what, this is the rule of the game. You need to do some of these not so interesting things, just so that we all can get to those A games that we all want to work on. So he would acknowledge, the personalities. So that I felt was very good, because at that point of time, if it had gone any other way, I would have started looking out for another job somewhere else.
That is an incredible story and also for you to be able to point out all of the different elements of management and leadership that then had this impact on you. Ultimately, it was the difference between you staying or you leaving, and that conversation made you feel engaged in wanting to give more and contribute in a situation that maybe wasn't necessarily the most inspiring or the most desirable task. Can you tell us a little bit about how Shrijeet inspired you to become a manager?
I was at this place where, I was 9 years into being an IC, and I was a fairly successful one at being an IC. I was a senior engineer at a startup, and I had this opportunity where my manager asked me, okay, do you want to move into management, or do you want to, go into the tech side? And for that, I have to imagine the future, right? What do I want to be? Like, do I want to be a director, VP, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? How would I be taught? For me, that all that imagination, the data set for the imagination comes from, how Shrijeet talks. So for me, I was like, I want to be like that. Where it actually was practical for me is the impact that he had. Everyone under Shrijeet grew. So everyone knew that if you were working for Shrijeet Mukherjee, you can rest assured about growth. He's going to think about you, and especially his delegation style. It's one of the best I've seen. It had a very unconventional take on how he would delegate and how he would really, drive that high performance. That was very inspiring, and that really had an impact, right? People wanted to come and work for our group because they were like, we have heard Shrijeet's a great leader, people are growing, people are getting promoted. They would also leave the team, it's fine, but they knew that it was a good team to work for because their careers would grow. And I was like, that's the impact I want to have. I know I can write good code, and I'm really passionate about systems, but going forward, I want to really expand my impact. And the only way that will happen is if you bring people into the mix, right? So that's when I decided that, okay, I'm going to try engineering leadership. And if I don't like it, I'm going to come back.
There are a couple things we want to dig into and follow up there, both on what you had mentioned about delegation, but the other thing was you had mentioned that everybody was guaranteed to grow under Shrijeet. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel like you grew under Shrijeet, and what was the impact that had on you?
He encouraged openly discussing about promotions, how one should think about growing their careers. He would openly discuss positive success stories, and he would endorse them. And so that always made me feel comfortable that I could talk about my career with him anytime. So I would constantly just during my one-on-ones, I would bring it up, and I would be like, how can I get to that level? How can I, think about the next step for myself? Can you give me a project that can let me shine, or, have more of the visibility? And initially he would really guide me, and it was partly about setting the right expectations as well, because maybe I was overly enthusiastic, right? And there was a lot of gap to be bridged. So that time I remember he clearly gave me a very high visibility project. He was like, see, I don't know how ready you are, only you know how ready you are. So if you are coming and telling me, why don't you take this small part in this bigger project? Work with, that time there were 2 principal engineers, and they were really driving the project, and it was a very important thing on the roadmap. It was a VXLAN encapsulation project. So he was like, I want you to do this part, you can take care of it, but if you can pull this off, and depending upon how much help you need, we can decide the next step, right? And then he would coach me. He was like, you know what, we can't afford to lose this much time. We need more velocity, we need more quality. Maybe you should do more code reviews. Can you do more code reviews? I see that you wrote an email to this neighboring team asking this. Why did you have this question? I thought that, so he would delve into the details and really tease it out and make sure that I also knew how much gap there was to be bridged, and then he would coach me. So it took me like 8 months to get that next promotion, but I felt like we were working on it and something was happening. So I think that's how I was motivated. I was like, if I keep doing this, Shrijeet's going to do something the next time,
I can hear how impactful that support was. It almost the impression I get is you two were almost plotting together and conspiring to really push your career in the right direction. And so with that, for you, like going through those tough projects and having somebody to help roadmap those opportunities to help continue to challenge you to grow, can you share a little bit about like how you felt throughout that, to have that person to support you in that way, to coach you through that whole process? Like, how did you feel throughout the whole process to have that type of support?
First of all, he would not just do this with me, right? He does this with all the members of the team. He's constantly growing various team members. There would always be good examples around me. And I knew that the only way to actually get the rewards would be to do good work. He would set references. So for me, it was very easy. There was a sense of clarity. I remember feeling very clear about, okay, so this is a behavior that's endorsed in my team. This another person, Bob, is getting mentioned in the all hands because he did good code reviews. He helped the team by actually guiding a new hire through the code review. And Shrijeet's talking about the language that he used in his code review, and seems like that's a good behavior. So maybe if I do that, then I'm already 30% ahead of my curve, right? Or he would ask people to do the demo, and whenever there was a performance gain or something like that, he would actually mention why it was hard and how the engineer accomplished it. So I was like, okay, maybe if I care about my thing, if I really go that extra mile, that's what is valuable to my manager. That's what is getting noticed. It's not just enthusiasm, it's not just words, but it needs to culminate in work. And if I'm able to do something like what Bob did, or another person in the all hands did, then it's guaranteed, right? It's just that doing that is hard because that's the behavior that's endorsed or rewarded in the team. So for me, I would feel like sometimes I would feel challenged and pushed, but also at the same time it was very clear because it was through the team growth, or how he was really communicating with the team, how he was really endorsing certain behaviors, not endorsing certain behaviors. I got clear indications as to what are the ways that one can really grow their career in this team. And so this was my thing in my mind, right? And then when I would talk to him, I would always feel supported. It was never like, you're asking for growth, I'm going to give you a hard thing, let's see if you can do this, and if you can, then I'll see whatever I can do. It was always like, okay, this is let me first tell you where you are, and let's come to a consensus, and then chart the course from there and work on it, right? And whatever happens, every one-on-one we'll work on it, and through feedback we'll address it. So through that, I felt supported. At the same time, it was not easy. It was not like, oh, Shrijeet supporting me, so 1 year from now, I'm going to get the promotion. Through a lot of ways, he would set good markers inside the team.
And it sounded like it was really easy to see the markers along the way, not just in the feedback that you got yourself, but in how everybody else's work was being acknowledged and recognized. And then it became really clear, like, this is the type of actions as a team member, these are the actions I should take to continue to make an impact within the team. I think it's really cool how you spotlighted all of those different steps.
Yeah, one back story to that is, so how he would really endorse these good behaviors inside the team, right? Sometimes there would be conflicts between senior principal engineers and junior engineers. So Shrijeet would always chime in as soon as that happened. The cubes were all very close by, so Shrijeet would walk by and he was like, he's a great martial artist, by the way. He's a karate teacher. So he would bring a reference from, karate or something, and he would be like, this would never fly in martial arts, because this is what happens. We're supposed to do this, and can we just make sure that this happens? And he would just so nicely bring references from either karate, or he liked to ride his bike, somewhere from some part in his brain, right? Because his experience was varied. It was not very focus. I mean, there was focus, but it was not one track. He would just mix humor and other life experiences and resolve conflicts very well. He would always care about fitness, physical fitness, the role of physical fitness in work, or even his passion for karate. I started learning kickboxing just for that, literally just for that. So, I mean, my point being, it was just a well-rounded personality, and it would come across in his communication.
Do you have a favorite metaphor or story that he used in referencing those different examples that still resonates with you today?
One particular thing he had said is, you should know when to use defense and when to use offense, and that's a classic martial arts theme, right? And I think karate is more of a defense style. I don't know. But he would always say that, especially in leading cross-functionals, there would be so many teams, and he would be like, don't fight every battle. This is not worth fighting. Just play defense over here, and I'm telling you from my karate experience, we're going to win this, or we're going to take this to completion. And he would tell a little bit more about why it applies, why the example from karate and this one can be mapped together, and why, playing defense is like the best thing to do here. And I would be like, oh, wow. And that would just get us more invested. It would just get us more engaged in that situation. That's
and
one
it's also,
thing that
it sounds like
came to my
he's
mind.
sharing a lot about himself and things that he cares about and is deeply passionate about, and then relating that to the experience that you all have
Yes.
together. Totally. So I want to rewind real quick, because one of the things that you had mentioned early on was about some of the unique ways or different ways that Shrijeet delegates. So some of the different delegation skills that he employs. So I was wondering if you could share two things about how Shrijeet delegates. So what is kind of the tactical approach that he does for it? And then if there's like a different mindset or how he views delegation that you think is different. I was wondering if you could share maybe what you observed with those two sides of delegation.
Yes. So the mindset was always this, and I know this because I asked him this question specifically later down the line when, I became a manager. I was like, it's so hard to find that balance. How do you know you're over delegating, if there is anything like over delegating, or how do I know that I'm under delegating? Am I doing too much? So his approach is that, there is something called as the aptitude or the potential of the candidate, and then there is the current skill level of every engineer, right? So as a leader, one needs to keep in picture both of these things. What is the potential of this person, and then what is the current skill level? And then when you're assigning tasks or when you're doing goal setting, it's very important to know that here is a task. There are 3 people who can do it, right? Can I consider person A who has high level of potential? He wants to do it. There is a high will index from this person. The engineer really wants to do it, and he has the potential to do it as well. But there is no time for it. Like I love to develop this person through this task, but there's no time for it. So in this case, let me find the person who has the highest skill level. But I'm going to keep in mind, now there is a bit set, right, for that other engineer who is kind of ready for this task, but he just needs more time because this is a potential for him. So I remember so many times he has told me that, I think you can do this, but this needs to be done in 2 days. I don't think we have that velocity. So keep working on it. I'm going to keep you in mind for these kind of tasks, but this is not the right time for it. So many times he has said no to me but he has also given me projects where my current skill level was just not there for it, but I had a great aptitude for it. I was going to be a great learner, and I had shown potential for it. And he would be like, you know what, I don't think this is at your level. This is definitely going to be a challenge for you, but I think you should do it because you're going to learn this, you're going to interact with these people, this is how you're going to grow, and it's going to be beneficial for the team. He was completely hands off. I've never seen him micromanaging. He had this framework where, for every, whether it's a small project of 2 people or it's a cross-functional, whatever it was, Shrijeet always had his champions for each project, and he would trust them. I don't know if there is a perfect for delegating, but through his delegation, everyone felt empowered, and there always seemed to be something in the stack that we could learn for, and it was directly related to our career growth.
It sounds like it was the sweet spot of both challenge and support. And it sounds like more often than not in the direction of how the team wanted to grow as an individual. And I think you're so right. Like that is such a hard balance to have. And how do you map that out with every single project and task? But it sounds like also it was very encouraging. And I really appreciated how you shared. Oftentimes he would say no, but there would be the explanation behind about how it impacts the business and how and we'll still find ways and am committed to still find ways to help you grow in this particular area. And so yes. I think that's really powerful. So I think one of the things that has been really special that you shared in your nomination is how Shrijeet's not only mentored you during your time together, but has still continued to help support your growth as an engineering leader. Can you share a little bit more about how that mentoring relationship has persisted throughout your time together? Like, what does that look like? How has that support been provided?
One thing very unique about Shrijeet is he always gets back to me within 24 hours. But even if it is just saying like, hey, you know what, I have a long format answer for your question. I don't have the time to type it out now. Give me a couple of days, I'm going to get back to you. And then I feel like, okay, I don't feel guilty. I don't feel bad about reaching out to them. That's very important. And that's something that I practice when I mentor people as well. One thing is his response time. And the other time is like, there's never been a time where he has said no to mentorship, be it at Cumulus, I would have so many questions. Some of the times my questions would not even be correctly formed because I didn't have the experience. And he would be like, I think this is what you're asking. And he would give me the right perspective on it. It's not just that do this, do that. This is a spreadsheet that I use for feedback. This is a framework. It would never be just at that level. It would always be about changing perspectives. Think about this. His answers would always motivate me to do some soul searching or critical thinking. One of the things that he has motivated me is just thinking about things. And I reached out to him. I said, I'm really confused. I have competing offers and what should I do? So he's mentored me there. And it's not just that, hey, this compensation is better, this role is better, pick this. It's always about where do you want to go? How do you envision yourself? What is important to you? Do you think this is? And like I said, he teaches karate. So he's a teacher, he really knows how to break down things.
When you were sharing about, he's always provided perspective. And then you touched on the example of helping you negotiate your next career move. Do you want to dive deeper into that example or have another one of where the perspective he's helped provide you it's helped impact your decision or impact the approach that you take?
So for me, this time it was about, I wanted to work for a bigger company and I wanted to really work with more senior people as a manager. In a startup, there are different things expected from you as a leader, but I really wanted to now expand and be challenged. So that was what I was coming at it with. And of course, the compensation was important, the name of the company was important, the role was important. So I had certain filters in my head. And then Shrijeet knew all of this. And then it came down to really 2 offers that I was really torn between. And so he was like, seems like you're very unclear about what you want. Seemed like, you were very focused on why you wanted a job change and where you wanted to go. But now that you have the offer, seems like you're bringing it down just to the numbers. Is it truly just the numbers, or it's really everything apples to apples? You're saying it's apples to apples, but is it really? Have you thought about it? Then I'm like, yeah, it is, because both the teams are like technically really good, blah blah blah, right? So because I was biased already, I was not able to make a decision. So he's like, why don't you ask for another call with the team? Why don't you just meet the team members? Why don't you talk again with the hiring manager? Let them sell the team to you. If not the hiring manager, if you've already talked to them, talk to the director, ask for a call, because I would like to do that. If someone is joining me, I would want to do that. I'm sure these companies will be able to do that. So if you're actually saying it's apples to apples, to make sure you have a diversification somewhere, go and talk to them, gather more data, because a good decision is only when you have enough data. And also, I don't think it's really apples to apples. He actually motivated me to go and read the core values of the company once again and write down my own core values. And then he was like, can you see a match? Where is the bigger match? Can you relate to it as a product? Do you feel like you're proud of that as a product? Will you be able to talk about it proudly in a social gathering? When you're alone, can you endorse the product? Do you feel okay with it? That's what is core value. So why don't you do a core value check and see if it is really apples to apples? And then I'm like, yeah, this is really important, especially in a leadership position, it's going to be more important. And then I'm like, maybe I'm not so sure, maybe it's not apples to apples. Let me revisit all the criteria. And I'm like, yeah, it's actually not that hard. But that required me to think, that required me to be open. And he breaks so many biases. He has this rule about how human beings are so biased when it comes to decision making. And that is what I love about it. Like, I always feel like I get that clarity after talking to him.
The shattering of the bias in decision making. What an incredible story. Mallika, the final question I was hoping you could leave us with. If Shrijeet is watching this, is there anything you'd like to say to him now?
So I just want to say, continue that spirit of learning and motivating others, because he might not be aware of this, but he's just making such a tremendous impact on so many of young people like me, who are ambitious and who really want to think about their careers. He's really a gem in the Silicon Valley. So, 3 cheers to that, Shrijeet.
3 cheers. Wonderful. Mallika,
Yeah.
thank you so much. This has been so much fun. And your stories, diving into Shrijeet and everything, are just incredible. And so just thank you again. And this has been an absolute joy.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so glad you guys are doing this, because I have been a consumer of so many of the SFELC videos. Especially after I moved into management. You guys are just awesome. So I'm so happy you're doing this. We need more inspiration, and we need more references. So thank you guys.